Hey.
Yeah, we're just letting people start joining here at the top of the hour. We're going to give it a moment, and then I'll go ahead and kick it off.
I'm checking out who all's in the room. Hey, everybody. Let's switch my monitor to this one. Oh, now I can see everything.
Well, while we're waiting, does everyone want to go up onto chat and say hello, where they're from, what organization you're with? We'd love to hear and network if there is opportunity to arise. And I'll start it off. Hi, Nichols. Excellent. I see a whole bunch of people signing in. Thank you. And saying hello, hello, hello. All right. Well, I mean, we might as well get this started here, Jeremy. And so good afternoon to all of the Blackbaud family, and thank you for joining us here today. My name is Rainey Allen, and I'm a Blackbaud Customer Success Manager, and I'm absolutely thrilled here to welcome you to what promises to be very fun, energizing, insightful, and interactive session. So whether you're tuning in from across the globe or just around the corner, I'm super happy that you've made time with us to be here today. First off, I have a few housekeeping items. So again, go ahead and introduce yourself in chat and tell us where you're joining from and what organization you're with. Second, if you have any questions during this session, please raise your hand and I'll bring you off mute so you can share your Ask Live. We definitely want this to be interactive. Also, if you experience any audio or technical issues, try refreshing your browser and see if this helps resolve the issue. The audio is being broadcast through your computer speakers. All right. What is like the number one question I receive? And it is this session being recorded? And I do have the answer. That is yes. You'll receive access to this within 24 to 48 hours. And on the top right-hand side, we have for our Goldcast navigation today, the Docs tab where you'll be able to download session material. You'll be able to use the Q&A panel to ask questions. The chat is open for group conversations, and the message tab allows you to send direct messages to other participants in network. So now, without further ado, I'm excited to introduce today's presenter. He's a nonprofit technical consultant and web developer, Jeremy Reynolds, and he's with Streetlight Digital. And he is going to be guiding us through his session, and I love this name, Herd Your Kittens, Email Interest, Constituent Groups, and Queries. And I have to say, we're very fortunate because Jeremy brings so much a wealth of experience and insights. He's been in this product for 20 plus years. And so I'm really looking forward to learning from the session today. So. Well, let's make this session together great. And with that, Jeremy, I'm going to pass it over to you to finalize your introduction and start with your demos.
All right. Hey, everybody. I see some new faces in the room, so I'm glad to see everybody here. Welcome to Herd Your Kittens. You're going to see this little screen pop up at the top back and forth as I go between my slideshow and my actual browser. And we're going to actually take a look today at Luminate and some of the cool stuff that you can do to put your different people and constituent groups into very usable formats throughout the system so that you can target them with better emails. You can get them set up in various subsystems like You can control permission and access to different parts of your site. And Luminate has a bunch of different tools throughout it. It's actually, I like to think of Luminate as a little bit of a Frankenstein, that it's like a building that's been built piece by piece. And as you go through it, you can see some pieces that are newer than others, and they all have different capabilities. But together, they're actually really powerful for what they can do. I'm Jeremy. I work with a marketing firm, Streetlight Digital, and before that, I was with Zero Cancer, and been using Luminate since before it was called Luminate. Many of the folks in here have too. If your background is as a database administrator, or you're an event coordinator, you're a manager who's working on day-to-day, peer-to-peer, you're doing ticketed events, no matter who you are, I'm hopeful that you can take something from this presentation and take away something new. At the same time, be sure to participate. Just like Rainey said, please do ask questions in the chat, make comments, and use the Q&A if you like. Make this interactive as we can. So getting started, we're going to take a look at several different systems within Luminate. We're going to do a little bit of slideshow, and then we're going to actually hop in and see how some of the things work. Ignore all the data that's in there. We're just in a test environment, but you're welcome to check out these things. And like said before, this will be recorded. So as we fly through a bunch of different pieces, you can go back and see kind of some of those details. Groups, queries, tasks, surveys, report writer, and import export are all the systems that we're going to look at. And let's kick right off. So groups are where everything in our system lives. And you're going to see all the different systems that we're looking at today. All of them are basically able to take the people in your system, and they're able to put them into buckets so that you can use those buckets in all kinds of different tasks. The first one that comes to mind for most of us is going to be email segmentation, but we can also actually use those to create welcome series. We can use them to actually upgrade records so that we know who we're emailing to and actually take them off the list if they're not interested. Right. And so that's where everything lives. Whenever you do anything in the Luminate system, it's going to do one of two things. It's going to either mark something on the record as like a custom little attribute to tell it how to use the record. And that's stuff like opt in and opt out. But it's usually almost anything else it does in the system, it's also going to create a group. And whether that's you opt into emails or opt out, it actually creates a group corresponding with that, right? The only real exception to that is when you just do a record update. And even when you have those, though, we're going to look at how you can actually take those things that don't make groups and force them to make groups. So it's useful as far as putting all the different pieces of our software together. The other thing is just for internally organizing everything in your system, and then also controlling access to different people in the system based on what they have. So let's hop over here and look at, get the right browser, and take a look at our group system within Luminate. So this is, I'm sure many of us are familiar. If you're new to this and just using this as a training video, you're going to see fewer options than I have here when you see in this dropdown, just based on what solutions are turned on for you and also what you have access to as a administrator, which is controlled by groups. But you go into Constituent 360 and you'll go down into groups, and you'll be able to see all the different groups in the system, and you can look at them one by one. You can see many of the different things on here are automatically generated, but some of them are actually generated by the systems we're going to be looking at later on today. And you'll see little icons here letting you know whether they're an admin versus being something that was automatically created by a query, a little exclamation point, and whether the group rebuilds itself on a regular basis. Those are really crucial aspects of groups that we're going to be looking at. The other thing that you're going to notice, if you actually haven't been that deep into groups, is right here, this magic green button that says map a new group to an offline segment. Many of us use Razor's Edge or Razor's Edge NXT, and you can actually set up queries in Razor's Edge that Luminate is able to see, and it can actually go over to there and grab the groups that you've created in Razor's Edge NXT. So a lot of us may be more comfortable doing things in NXT. You can absolutely do that and use queries, which can be beneficial because sometimes NXT has access to details Luminate doesn't, or it has query abilities that are just really useful here. The administrator group list, that's only for the admins to set other admins up, so not usually something you have to worry about. Group type list is used for organization, and the rebuilding groups list is the other big one that I want to take a look at here. Almost every situation where you're making a group, that I can think of, you want that group to actually update itself over time. The most useful aspect of groups in my experience has been really in email invitations, where you want to actually keep your segments small. If you missed it yesterday, there was a segment on there was a presentation on email best practices, and this is beyond important when you're actually emailing somebody, is you want to make sure anybody you're emailing actually wants to get your messaging. We don't actually shed any tears when somebody drops off of our list. We actually are happy when that happens, because when somebody is on your list and they say, you know what, I don't want this, we actually have the Googles and the Yahoos of the world looking over our shoulders to say, did anybody actually look at this email? And if they didn't, or if they, forbid, hit the spam button, that actually hurts us, so that everybody in the system who wanted to see that email gets hurt too. So the biggest, probably most important application of groups when you're using Luminate is in their email system, is making sure that you've got the smartest, smallest, most qualified, most active groups possible when you send out a message. And the way that we do that is with rebuilding groups. Over time, this will actually start accumulating quite a few groups. And so one of the things that's really useful when you're using Luminate is the ability to go and say, what is, this whole thing is built on something made 100 years ago. Is it actually rebuilding? And you can go into the rebuilding groups page and see all the different statuses and when they're rebuilding, if they're rebuilding, right? The other thing that you'll want to note on here that will come back is any of these groups that's made from a query, you can jump straight to the query. Just like you can jump to the group itself, you can jump straight to the query by clicking View Query, and it'll actually show you the logic that was used to create that group. So we're going to go ahead and hop back into our presentation. But the biggest thing is when somebody belongs in one of those groups, that group is used to control access, whether that's access to an email by the fact that they were on the list when the email was sent out, or it's access to a part of TeamRaiser or one of the page builder pages or some other part of Luminate. You can actually set up a page builder page so that it only is allowed to be seen by people that are in a certain group. You can actually set up, if you are really fancy and do API stuff, you can actually set up the API so it is limited to only people who are in a group. So you can actually make custom experiences for people, and it's all based on these cool groups. Group. So queries. Queries are our number one place where we actually create groups. I saw it just a second ago. Queries have a couple different purposes. And the first thing I want to see is how you can combine all the different attributes that a record has in Luminate. So when we're looking in Luminate, and this is just a totally random group, so I probably don't know who this is. I'm just going to grab a random person in this system. When we look in Luminate at a record, there are all kinds of details. Every single one of these little fields is one detail that's been saved in the database about this person. And some of them are automatic. If it's not editable, it's probably been made automatically. But a lot of these are editable. And so whenever we're making groups in our query view, we can actually, much like if you're used to NXT, especially in database view, you can see just a ridiculous number of various things that somebody has done, somebody belongs to, or somebody has flagged on their account. We can use these, all of these, almost everything in the system can be used to create a query. And so when we go over into the query, anytime we're making a query, you're going to always have to give it a name, and it doesn't like the same name. So I always have to make something up every time. And when you go in here, you'll actually see that just like all of those different drop downs, all those different little fields, there's a well-categorized list that actually can expose almost every single thing that's in there to your queries, right? This is a very, very powerful aspect. You also, this is a little sneaky tip that a lot of people may not know, but there's also this additional information and transaction information system, okay? These are two of the most powerful features that are probably underused within Luminate, and we're going to take a look at those in a couple of minutes, right? But you can actually set up something in our transaction information so that, for example, when was the largest transaction that they ever made? We want to think, when was the last time they registered for an event or they donated to the system? What is the largest one they ever did? And how long ago has it been since that happened? So we can actually take that. It's an automatically calculated field. It automatically updates anytime anybody has an interaction that would actually do that. And we can actually go in here and we say we want to, let's say we wouldn't do this necessarily for last year, but not this year. We wouldn't use the largest one. We would use the most recent one, right? So what we would look for is the largest transaction date right here. You want to put in a LIBON last year, but not this year. You can actually do that just by choosing the transaction information, last transaction date, and you hit the field clause. And I want to get that as it falls before 12 months ago, prior to today, and I hit save. When I do that, you can see here in the list, now I can actually, just with this, save this query, run this query. I'm going to go ahead and rename it LIBON. And when we run this query, it's probably, depending on how many transactions are in the system, it could take quite a while. Once you set up a query, you want to hit refresh and just kind of hit this refresh periodically. And what this is going to do is from today's date, it just gave us 27,000 people that were, their last donation date was before today. However, let's qualify that a little bit. I don't know that we want every single person who's given in the last 12 months. Let's say I've been around for 100 years. There may be some people separate from our groups. We hopefully are going through and doing quite a bit of work to make sure we've cleaned up our records. It's what most of us do all day if we're in the database management side of things. But we want to actually limit this so that even though we've got all of our deceased, underage, and so forth records in here, we also don't want to go too terribly far back. So we can go into transaction information, and we can go into the last transaction date and make sure it also doesn't fall further than 5 years ago. So we're just going to go, what was 60 months ago? So we can say it falls after 60 months ago prior to today. So that would be going farther back to 60 months, but earlier to 12 months, right? So we want it to fall after 60 months before today, before 12 months. I could even do this in the future. I don't know what good that would do me, but you could do that. Notice when I do that, the last time we had results, it's been cleared out because I just changed the query. Last time we had results, we had about 273,000 people, right? As we refresh this, eventually, I just kind of click this every 3 seconds because I'm impatient. Because we're on the dev server, you're going to see this is actually still a lot of people. There aren't a lot of transactions happening, but we can actually get people that have fallen within an earlier range. If we wanted to, we can even go into here, change it again, and let's just make it 13 months again. And we're only going, it's not LIBON, it's last year, but last year plus 1 month, but not this year, right? So we go ahead and run that. Hopefully we're going to end up with a smaller number. But as you can see, what we can do here is actually really control, fine-grained control over anything that has a date. What's cool about this, though, is it's not just dates. There are all kinds of toys for us to play with in this system. When I get back down to it, I can actually open up any constituent record here, and I can see all of these custom fields that have been added to the record that can actually sync over with Razor's Edge. They can sync with your other CRMs through Matic or whatever solution you have. But I can actually index off of any of these custom fields that I've created on the record. Advanced users will have all kinds of custom fields, and these actually let us do any sort of special thing we want to accomplish. That how many times has this happened if you've worked in Razor's Edge? You've gone over here, you've set something up, it's beautiful, it does exactly what you want to do. Now you need to email it, and all of a sudden you don't have a way for Luminate to see that that actually is a thing that you have done over there. It lives in a tile over on Razor's Edge and XT, and there's no good way to get it over. Well, it turns out if you've got a custom attribute within Razor's Edge and you've got a matching custom attribute over here in Luminate, you can actually make those sync up with one another so that every single time there's a save over on the Razor's Edge side, it goes ahead and updates this Luminate record. Well, that's wonderful. Now it's on the record. How do we use that? That's where we go back into our query system, and we can see when we look over here, we had these true false Boolean values of their cancer survivor. So be careful with your PII. I don't know how many people should be putting cancer survivor in their constituent Razor's Edge records, but you can have strings, text fields, number fields, all those different things. And then you can index off of those by going in here And which one did we actually select? We select mobile donor, okay? So mobile donor, that's an interesting situation. Knowing there's all kinds of external systems that could actually be doing donations, how exactly do you tell Luminate that system had a thing that happened, right? We had those last transaction dates. Those are really probably more built by something that's tightly integrated, like Razor's Edge, or that lives within Luminate. Let's say you had some third system, some legacy system you inherited, and it actually could send us a message saying, hey, somebody just donated, but you don't have a place to do that. That's where these custom records come in. Mobile donor, you could have that happen. Or let's say within Luminate, how do you know that they actually were mobile as opposed to being an in-person, like a regular form? You could actually have a specialized donation form and have a hidden field within that form that says mobile donor. Then when the person donates, it actually updates their records so that it says they're a mobile donor, right? So with query system, we can actually use that. The system knows this is a true false field. So when I hit field clause, it should give me specifically different aspect than the other one where it asks for date. I can say equals true. I can also say it is not blank. I can say it does not equal true. There's all kinds of different ways that you can do the logic. While it would seem that is blank is similar to false, that's actually just a little bit different. We'll get back into that here in a sec. But overall, there's all kinds of different things you can do directly from the record that we know about the person, okay? The other things that you can do, though, are group clause. So once you've created somebody into a group, you've got it set up in the way that you want it to, you can actually add a group clause, and you can now go through and say, I only want people who live in, let's say, Indiana. And you have to spell it right. So I can actually go into Indiana and I can actually see if you've got the advocacy module turned on in your system, you'll actually see congressional districts, House districts, you'll see voting districts. You can actually just see people who live within the state. So let's say I just want people who live here in Indiana. I hit save. Now I have by default created anybody in the system that says they have given 12 months, 13 months, and or. And this is where I point out that I made a mistake earlier, which is very, very easy to do within the query system, okay? The query system is going to remember what the logic of the last time you did something was. So last time we did something, we added an or statement. The query system is now in or mode. It's a hidden mode. You don't know it's there, right? So when I put that query together earlier and we had 273,000 people, why was that? It's because I said everybody who falls before 12 months ago and everybody who falls 13 months ago, because there's either or, I basically got everybody in the world, right? What I should have done was I should have hit and instead of or. I wanted people who lived last transaction date was, let's change this back to 60 months ago. I want last year, let's do, actually, we're doing live on this. Let's actually change that to 24 months ago. Sorry for anybody who's screaming in their head while watching me do this, but nevertheless, so we had 12 months or 24 months. So it's before 12 months, after 24 months. That's an actual live on. In this case, I could also make it so it's everybody, regardless of their status of donation, who lives in Indiana. That's actually not all that useful, right? Instead, I actually want, let's say, limit to just people who live in Indiana. So now this is Libont with Indiana only because I've made this an and. But one thing I'll tell you is before I said this is now an and mode because I switched over to and, right? It's a hidden setting. Nobody can see it there. When I go and add a group clause, let's just notice that I'm not going to grab an admin group. Let's grab Eric's center members, whatever that is. Notice now it's an and mode because I had clicked and before. Instead of adding it as an or logic, it does it as an and. Let's change that back to or, and I'll show you then once again if I grab any random thing. Now it's back in or mode. Okay, so we'll got you there. We're going to remove all that, but let's see if now that I've changed this, I can actually save it and get a run query and actually get fewer than 275,000 people. There we go, 20. That's what we'd expect to see in a testing server, right? So Query Builder is really powerful, but it's one of the biggest takeaways. Write this down if you're taking notes, or if you're like one of the previous sessions using a Copilot or an AI to actually take notes for you, even better. Make a note, though, that you want to always, 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 anything you do, test your stuff. because it's very, very easy to actually not realize you're in OR mode, and now next thing you know, you've actually included everybody in the universe. The other things I'll notice here, though, are interaction clauses. So this is another really great thing that the system is saving automatically. Anytime anybody's going into this system, we've got custom types, and you almost never have those set up. You've got default types and reference types. What's great about this is, let's say I wanted to get somebody who, there's all kinds of different people. So let's say we had a donation, right? We want to get a donation, and usually we're just gonna, what we're ultimately gonna want to do is get a donation to a certain form, right? Or a certain, so let's actually choose one of these that actually gives us some options. All right, so what you normally want to do with a reference type is you're saying, I want every single person who qualified in this specific event. We're filtering things down to it, right? So reference types, in this case, it's a personal event, which probably most clients don't have turned on, and it's dog walk, right? So you can actually go and grab, theoretically a donation. You could get somebody who's just donated to a certain campaign and use that with these reference types. You've also got these default types, which are a little bit more generic, and it's somebody who canceled a delay self-pledge, for example, or had an email bounce to their thing. And, well, nobody uses Classic, but anybody who had an opt-in and opt-out, an event RSVP. Really useful because it's automatically happening anytime that happened in the system. You've also got action alerts. So if you're using the advocacy module within here, you can actually take anybody who has replied to an action alert, right? And then if you've got a multi-center, you actually will see centers in here so that you can get opt-ins specific to that. So queries, great stuff. It took a while to do that because some queries actually let you build some really powerful stuff. In fact, one of the things I use the most frequently for is a suppression group, right? So suppression group, what is a suppression group? We're trying to whittle down the size of our group. And it's almost like if you can imagine a Venn diagram of, I want every person who's a donor, but I don't want to get this group of people who are focused on my puppies part of the cause, right? And I really want to get this big group of people who are donors and then punch a hole of it and remove all the puppies from it so that all I have left are the non-puppy people. And we'll send them an email saying, you should like puppies. What's wrong with you, right? So the way that we would do that is we'd actually create a group that's in here. And the easiest way to create a group like that is I can actually go ahead and use group clauses. And I'm going to say in the group clause, we'll just assume I grabbed federal is actually the puppies group, right? And then I'm also going to do a second group, and we're going to say, we'll just pretend this is our donors group. And at the top, you'll see include context are a member of any of, all of, not a member of, right? So what we're going to actually say is we don't want somebody who's a member of any of these would remove everybody who's part of that group. Somebody who's a member of all of these would remove some of those in the group, right? In this case, we just want to punch that hole out. So we're not going to, so we don't want anybody who's a member of the second group. And we're going to make this an and. So now we have a member of the first group and not a member of the second one. When I save this and I run it, when I'm all done, I'm going to have a group that's a suppression group of everybody who's in that group. So in this case, we had our kittens group, we had our puppies group, we have just the people in the puppies group, right? When you've created these queries, ultimately what you want to do is actually use them. So whatever query you end up, when you've got the amount that looks about right, you're going to say use query, and it's going to give you this pop-up where you can then turn them into a group. And this is ultimately the thing I'm going to say almost all these queries end up get used for, at least in the organizations I've worked with. So you're going to hit go, and it's going to let you go ahead and create a group, right? And we can actually set a security category, like I said before, and then create an existing type or create our own new type of group here. And once we've done that, we can also set it to rebuild so that as things change every time, let's think about this live hunt group. I want that window every single day that passes. I want to move that so that it's no longer the people who didn't give 12 months and 1 day ago. It's now just 12 months ago. So something like a live hunt group, it's absolutely fantastic to have this thing rebuild. If I've got a monthly live hunt engagement campaign, I can set this to once a month to rebuild, and this is automatically going to work for me. Now I can set up a repeat email going out once a month to the people in this group and know that they're going to be the people who qualified. One other thing I'll note on this is that it actually goes ahead and does the work for us with emails of opting people out, right? I putzed around with this group, so I broke it by grabbing those random group people. But normally, if you've chosen a group that has people who have opted out or have been disqualified by the system because they had hard bounces or soft bounces, this will automatically cut those people out. And in the end, even though your result on the query screen had 20,000 people, it'll actually, the emailable people, it'll actually calculate for you and let you know that it's there. So the greatest thing about groups is that you can combine them, you can stack them, you can use them to punch one thing out of the other, right? And you can use them in suppression groups. One of the best strategies any organization should be using is to get a group of people that they know haven't opted out of their emails, but just haven't looked at emails ever in the history of ever, right? If I've been in this organization and I've never opted out of the newsletter, but I have literally never opened it up, I have never clicked on anything, it does that organization a lot more good to stop sending that newsletter to the person who doesn't care about it, because Google is always looking over our shoulders in their Gmail inboxes. Yahoo's doing the same thing. Microsoft's starting to get the note and do the same thing, where they're actually going to stop delivering emails as aggressively or start putting them in a promotion folder or start sending them straight to spam based on if they know you sent out 100,000 different users in their system and nobody opened it, they cut them out. So one of the best things that we can do is set up a suppression group that will say, if I've been in the system for 5 years, I've gotten at least 5 emails sent to me, and I have still never opened anything, then let's cut us off the list. And then, of course, that rebuildability is the best thing about it, is that as you set up this logic, you don't have to go through. If you've ever had to be that person in Razor's Edge or some other database of record and you have to do a CSV export, then go over here and do a CSV import, and you have to do that on a weekly basis, this actually eliminates all of that for you. Remember, before you could actually map to an offline group and you could actually go directly to your Razor's Edge query. But in this case, instead of doing imports and exports, you can actually have it rebuild. All right, I've spent quite a while on that, but there's a reason. Most of the stuff that we do, most of the power in the system that's not automated is happening through the groups. But there's a second system that actually can help us make groups, and that is tasks. So tasks are really good for 2 things. One, all of those automated little tools that are built into the system right here, these engagement factors right here, these transaction details, all of these are lifetime amounts. All of these happen for us for free automatically from the system. Most of those run based on the task groups. So we can actually use that. Yes, we can definitely share this as a PDF. The presentation I'm doing here is a PDF. So I will get, Ramya, I'll get a list of people who attended. I'll make sure that you get that. I'll also say reach out to your CSM and make sure that they can get a copy of this. So the email engagement on it. And also, remember, you can also catch this on YouTube. It'll be on the Sky developers channel on Blackbaud once they've added everything to YouTube. So you can catch all this. So the email engagement, one other place, it'll be in Sfugo. After a couple of days, they'll update there. All right, sorry, really moving on. Email engagement. So email engagement is something we can actually set a task up for in Luminate, and it'll actually start making a score for people. I said before, I want to know if people have opened things. How do I do that? It's through the tasks. You can also use this to create team Razor groups very easily. So if you have a repeating event and you want to re-invite everybody who's come in the past, Team Razor participation, you can actually use a task to make a repeating group, and it'll actually do that for you. And then the affinity measures, and that's these other things that we're talking about of how engaged are they with your organization, okay? So let's take a look at that really quick. You'll find tasks under data management. Up at the top here, you'll see tasks. And you're going to see the task lists. The to-do list is the tasks that are set to repeat. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on the task list and create a new task. I can't stress enough how easily overlooked this is by a lot of people and how powerful a system this actually is, right? Some of these tasks are created automatically, like opt-in, opt-out tasks, I'm pretty sure are actually created automatically, at least were at one point. But the ones that the system doesn't use, you should be setting up. I cannot imagine any organization that does not benefit from having the RFM segmentation, the interest segmentation, and email response rate segmentation. So this is how we create those groups, right? All these are one of the great things about Luminate is it's got a really expansive help system to actually explain what each of these things are. But just off the top, a lot of these are also really fairly easy to guess once you know what you're looking at, right? So email response segmentation lets us actually create a score. Secretly, we are judging all the people in our database by how good a behavior they're on, right? So what we can actually do is assign a score to people based on what they're doing in their system and how engaged they are, right? So what I can actually do here is I go in and I create a task that says, whenever somebody does these things, give them a point. And I can actually say, if I want to say, how many times have you gotten an email and opened it, I can give you 1 point for every time you've opened an email. Maybe I give you 3 points or 5 points for every time you've clicked, because clicks are obviously a lot more valuable than looking at it. And sure, let's do forward a friend through the FAF system. Let's go ahead and give you 2 points for that, right? Let's say I only want to count this over people who've been around for a certain amount of time, right? So I can actually choose how far back I'm actually looking at this. And when I'm done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here. And remember, on the record, there's this little section that most people may not notice is there, is engagement factor. You can actually set your engagement factor 1 to 10, and it will save to the record. What's going to happen is every single night, if I put this on once a week or day, and then or every week, it's going to go through, and it's actually going to go through the entire system. It's going to look at every single person and all the emails they've been sent, and how many were they sent, how many did they receive, and we can actually go ahead and grade them. And it's going to, every time it does that, update this record, and it's going to increment it. So some of the different ways you might use this. If I want to know how many emails have been sent to somebody. Yes, I could go into their emails settings on their profile and look at all the emails sent. And if I've been around for 10 years, there'd be 1,000 of them, right? Or I can just go in here and say 1 point per email received, emails sent. How many emails this person has gotten. And security category is general. We're not going to use it for anything like that. We'll just leave it at 0. That's all emails. We'll do it once a day. Sure. And now all of a sudden, I need to find that one little quirk to this system is that it doesn't automatically turn it on when you send something. So what you actually have to do is run it 1 time to actually make it kick off the first time, and then activate it so that it'll run on a regular process, right? And what that's going to do is immediately, you'll see the next scheduled run is going to be at the same time tomorrow because it's actually executing right now, right? And we should actually see at this point it's completed. And I don't remember which engagement factor. I chose 3. Fingers crossed if this works right. And I didn't, it's just so dangerous to do in a live presentation. I think it actually may take 24 hours before it shows up on the screen, but it does immediately reflect in any groups that's built. What we'll see is how many emails this person's been sent, right? We can actually rename that as well, but for time, I'm not going to do that. But you can actually go into your database configuration and rename it so that we knew that's email sent. I just said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it actually. If we go into here and we look at their transaction information in your database configurations to set up database configuration, expand out your transaction information, you're going to actually find the engagement factor 3. And I can actually change that label to emails sent, right? This is also where you can set things up to be able to sync with other systems. And for the most part, you probably aren't going to be in here on an entry-level kind of user. But what should happen now that I've saved that is when I go back into my constituent record, now I'll actually see that engagement source doesn't say engagement factor. But again, once it updates the system, it'll say email sent. Okay. Once I've made this task, it's done. From now on, I am going to know going forward who is going to actually have this. And that's not the only thing, but wait, there's more. You can actually create tasks that'll show how engaged fundraisers are. So when I go into Team Raiser participants, I can actually go in here and you ever wonder Who in your system is actually sending coaching email? You send them coaching emails all day long. How many of them are actually doing anything? You can actually go in here and you can see how many people have registered for your events and how much they've raised. You can use those settings. You can actually use website engagement segmentation, and you can say, how many emails has somebody used? How many telefriends? How many times have they done a legislative alert response? How many events, ticketed calendared events have they done? How many times have they logged in? This is such a useful engagement metric, right? So just imagine you have an event series and there's 10,000 people have shown up. You know that they did something. You maybe have tracked whether they actually showed up in person. What if you actually knew if they ever logged into their participant center to do anything? This group would actually let you do that. Now, all of a sudden, you can send out a coaching invite or some sort of a stimulation email to try engage people, and only send it to the people you know have been in our system before. You could also set up an automatic system that says, hey, we notice you've never logged in before. Do you need some help? Give us a call. And you could set that up too, all based on this engagement system, making the group they'll let you do that. We're flying through things here, but as you saw, the other one was team raiser participation, and then there's the affinity measures. Those are your donations. One other thing I'll note here, another killer feature that people a lot of times don't use, is our RFM segmentation. RFM stands for recency, frequency, and I think M is magnitude. It's probably not. Somebody in advertising will tell me I was wrong here, but what this is, this has no settings. All it does is it goes through and it actually runs to populate a single engagement metric in here. And what that is scanning through, I'm not seeing it. It'll actually give them a score on how recently, how frequently, or how large a gift they have given. Okay, and so what that lets you do is when you're actually trying to target somebody for your appeal, you can actually say, okay, 100% of my database, but only 5% of them have given in the last year. Only 1% of them have given over $1,000. Only one of them gives twice a year, and the rest of them have given one time and one time only. What this actually lets you do is when you have created the RFM segmentation, when this runs, it's going to look at the transaction dates and say, are they in the top 10% of people who give like recently? Like if I looked at all the gifts over the history of my organization and the last 10% of them happened in the last, let's say 3 months, that's the last 10%. When this runs, anybody who is in the 90th and up percentile has given in that last 3 months. Okay. Or to say that differently, if 100% of my people who have given, but they've given across different amounts, if I were to put a chart together of who's given the most, the people at the very top are in my top percentage, and the people towards the bottom are at the bottom percentage. This is so useful. If you do not have RFM segmentation running, get it now and then use it. And like before, when you're over in queries, you can actually use that to create a new group, right? So I can go into any group. I'm not going to actually save this, but just for the sake of showing you. In my transaction information, we should actually see the frequency PTCL. That's what it will show up as. That is the people who have given most frequently. We'll see the monetary value PTCL. That is the amount they've given is worth the most. They are the largest, most generous over time. And recency is who has most recently done it. So frequency is, if I give 5 times a year, I'm high frequency. If I give a lot over time, but maybe not all that frequently, or maybe I do, that's a value frequency, right? And then the PTCL is recency, is how recently in the last week or whatever. And it's automated, right? So if I set somebody who's at the very top in the recency PTCL, that's going to be like, if you were to look at like overall how often people donate, this is like the most recent of them. It isn't necessarily in the last week. Like if I had a very periodic database, maybe that actually the most recent 10%, that might go back 7 months to be the top 10%. Other orgs, it may be the last like 3 days. It just depends on how quickly people are going. But you can go into a query, you can make a recency, and then you can add a field, and it's just going to ask whether you want people in, and probably want something in the greater of the 90th percent. We want the top 10% of the people, they are 90% above, right? They are at the 90% up on the chart, and we choose that. And there we go. And now we can actually target those people. All right, so tasks are brilliant. They are a killer app that I think a lot of people don't realize they have and a lot of other systems don't have. And then there's import export, and we're going to be speeding up as we go just because these are a little bit smaller topics, right? I've got this huge honking database. It's got, if you were actually to turn it into rows for all the people, every single one of these things has some sort of entry in the database, right? We just quickly blew into it, but like really, when we look at it, every single line in this system is a piece of data that the system has recorded about our users. All of it, right? It's incredibly robust. It's more powerful than I think a lot of people realize, but it's also a beast if I want to update it and I don't have an automated system. That's where import export comes in. Okay. What we're going to want to do in import export is we're just going to create an operation where we upload a file, right? And what we can do is we just simply give it a name. We give it a file type. This is, you're actually going to see something most likely different than this, actually. This is data sync, so I did that wrong. You actually won't have that button almost ever. So ignore that previous one. You want create custom import. All right, so you're going to actually choose in here, you're going to choose the import name, and then you're going to upload a CSV or a TSV. And when you upload it, all you're going to do is you're going to have rows that have all of your constituents in it, and columns that correspond with some sort of a database entry. And you can actually choose based on your exchange ID. You can choose based on a fax ID. You can change versus your constituent ID. Or if you've been setting it up and you've actually been syncing across systems between Razor's Edge, you can actually use your Razor's Edge NXT ID for these. But you need something to identify this is this person's record. Luminate tends to think of people as a constituent ID, CONS_ID, cons ID, right? You will see this on every single record. When you look at a record, it'll actually have the cons ID right here, constituent ID. This is the boss thing to identify who somebody is canonically in the system, right? So you get a CSV full of constituent IDs, names, first names, last names, and then any of those other database objects that are possible to update. And you can actually do that. Browse this. We'll just upload it into the system. You'll hit the next, and what's going to let you do is, just for the sake of time, I won't show it, but it's going to let you choose each of these columns. What does it correspond to? And you can pick and select, and it will go ahead and let you mass update your records. Wonderful when you're working from your own system, or when you need to do some sort of custom data processing, and you could just do it quickly over in Excel and then upload it into the records. You can do it that way. You can also use this to create groups. Right. So and look in the manual, it'll tell you the details of how to do this. But if you put a CSV file with constituent IDs and a group name, you can actually just go ahead and upload your entire CSV and it'll create a new group if it doesn't exist. Or if you use an existing group ID, it'll add people to that group. Or if you add a third column saying remove, you can actually do that with like email interest groups and remove people from the group. So this is a great way to get things done. And I want to call this out because I don't know why it exists. There's this mail merge thing here. Don't use it. Don't ever use it. I can't imagine where you'd want to use it because import export is the greatest way to get info out into the system. And the best way to get out of the system is our report writer. Report writer lets you do a wild amount of, I think, honestly, there's not a lot that is on this page that you cannot already access in Report Writer one way or the other. And there are things that are not on this page and will never be on this page that you can also access within Report Writer. Report Writer is an incredibly robust system. It lives here under data management and reports. I found a lot of organizations actually never go past this homepage, especially if you're graybeard like I am, and the kids, teenagers, I have two of them, will cause that. A lot of times the people who've been around actually use Report Classic and the pre-made reports that are right out of the box, very simple. And if you want a year-over-year comparison, your Team Razor is a great way to get it, right? But Report Writer actually has just a ridiculous amount of depth to what you can get. Every one of the software systems in this system has some sort of a corresponding thing in Report Writer. And then there are several different reports. Each one of these has access to some level of all of the different entries on that database screen, right? The database screen, every one of these, one of the things I'll note is as you look down through these, if I choose any random, I'm just going to grab a random report from Report Writer here. We'll do registrations is a good one on TeamRaiser. What we're going to see is just all these guys that were throughout are also over here in great detail. And when we're talking about something like an event like TeamRaiser, you've got all kinds of logistics around the registration of their event. All those details are in here towards the bottom, like their team captain and what was their registration settings, information about the campaign. But here's the cool thing. Almost all of these also have some base access to the constituent record, okay? You can go into the actual participant information and you can get a lot of the different things that are on that person's user page, on that person's constituent record. You can actually get some almost every report in here. You can get some level of things, right? Whether it's their email or their phone numbers. And so the report writer actually, when you figure out how to leverage it right, you can get all kinds of data throughout the entire system. And that's why I say mail merge, just say no to mail merge, because there's nothing that you're going to get in mail merge that can't actually come out of report writer. Anything you want to do in report writer, let's say I wanted to get all of the people who are a member of the groups in report writer. Like I want to get a member. So I've made all these special little groups within Constituent 360, and I want to actually get people who are a part of a group. I can actually do that. The key is I got to figure out a sneaky way sometimes to get the information I'm looking for, right? In this case, I'm looking for the interaction of them joining a group, right? So what I'm actually going to do is an interaction report to get how many people are in the group. I'm going to go into, I can do interaction details. And what I can do is I can search through here for group, and I can actually select that as, if I got the right one, you can actually select the group ID, and then you're going to go through and you're actually going to, in your settings, set your filter to specific groups. And now you can actually get a report of all the different people that are in your group. But the cool thing about it is you can get any information that was inside of that report, you can get about the constituents. So like, let's say I wanted to get, what is the email engagement of my donors to this specific donor campaign? Well, I could do a donor report, and then I can go back into that same thing I used before to make the group. I can go into those additional details and I can grab their engagement number out of here, right? And now I've got not just a report of the people who donated, but how likely they are to get email. Now I can just target just the people I know open email who've been around for a while and donated. And I've just cut that big grip of Google saying you had a 10% open rate. I can make that more like 90% because I only emailed the people I know did it, right? Really powerful. Mail marriage will let you do 100th of the amount of what you can get out of here, and it'll do it tomorrow, right? Mail merge basically is a well-labeled, well-intended thing that when you set it up, you'll have to wait for a while and it can't get everything you want. Report writer's where it's at. Another cool thing about report writer is you can create new groups based on it, okay? So, and like I was saying with report writer, if you've got those email KPIs, you can get it. You can actually do reports on your emails. You can create new groups. Here's one other thing that most people may not realize. When you're in a donation campaign, many of you may have actually said in your donation campaign, I want to get a report from my donation. So let's say I wanted to run a report of donations, right? One of the things that you might not realize is anytime you do a report in any subsystem, whether it's TeamRaiser, email, donations, whatever you want, right? Let's go into our email campaigns because that one won't have a lot of settings. I go into report and I grab any random report here. Let's see if it'll actually let me do it. I don't regularly use the sandbox, so I have no idea what's actually, oh, this is going to be a fun one. When I submit this report and it's done running, and they're usually pretty quick, actually. So even though this is going to be gigundous, now that it's completed, when I click view from this report screen, pretty, I'm not going to say disappointing since I'm speaking on at your conference, but like it's not the most amazing report, right? It's got 4 columns. Ugh. Guess what? it's not showing you everything. That report is actually gigantic, and it's over here in the report manager. Once I've run that report, you'll see this quick view summary report right here. It looks very lackluster, right? But check out what happens if I save this file to my, just save it to my desktop here, and I open it. I hope that there's actual emails that have been sent. New computer, so all right, it's wanting to tell me all kinds of stuff, right? A lot of these reports will actually have columns and columns and columns of details about the people that filled this out. It'll have, you can't really necessarily set them, but it'll have their names and emails. It'll have whether they're opt-in and opt-out, if they've opted in and out of emails overall. It'll have all kinds of stuff. So I encourage you, look for hidden details inside your reports. Regular reports you run, open them up in Report Writer and see what else is hidden there. Last one is surveys. When you create a survey, and this is going to be really quick, but anytime you've created a survey, any group that you've made in your survey, you should actually be able to associate groups and interests automatically, meaning if I took this survey, go ahead and put me in this group. I can do that. But another really cool thing I can do is when I'm creating a survey form, I can actually create survey groups. I can associate groups based on what was their response to the survey. So I can actually go into this survey and I can say, I want to only make the folks that said yes. And I can go in here and say, based on this survey, I want to choose people that can say yes, and it'll go ahead and make this group. Now, anytime it takes that survey, it'll be over in our Constituent 360 under a name of opt-in test in this case, and it's going to actually create that group for me. How wonderful. Only thing is it's not going to rebuild. It does it at the moment somebody saves that survey, but it's a great way to actually make things. So you can actually assign interests that way. Another thing, like you can set them up for an email interest, and you can update those custom fields. So another thing you'll see in here is when I look in the survey and I edit any one of these questions that I see in here, boy, there's a lot here. When I look at these questions, if it's a compatible field, like let's say this is a yes, no, when I hit edit, I can actually in this, assuming I have, yeah, you can tell it it's got personal information so that when it's deleted later, it'll actually delete this from the record. But I can actually update constituent profile, selecting a field that's in here, including all these fun little special fields that I actually created. Now, anybody who answers this, it's going to update that custom field, and that can actually be reported in Report Writer, and that can actually be used in Query Builder to do cool stuff. So that's a rundown of all the different pieces. Just a couple of gotchas, right? Always test before sending. You already saw it. I did a group. I thought it was going to be 20 people. It was 275,000 people because I said or instead of and. Very, very easy to do. And the repercussions of that is you end up emailing every single person in the country about something that was supposed to be just for that little piece of people. Just say no to the mail merge module. Watch your rebuild schedules. So one of the things that you want to note here is all the way back on constituents, you saw that there was a list of when things rebuild. If I have built a group that's built on another group, that's built on another group, but not another group, I made that punch out of the people who don't like dogs but are donors, right? Be careful, because if I've said all the people who are donors but are not in this other group, it's going to rebuild based on when those other groups rebuild, right? So if I've got a donation group, let's say it runs at midnight every night, and I've got an email of people who have not donated yet, and it runs, 11 o'clock. If I'm trying to create a suppression group so I send only to the people who haven't donated in this campaign, I want to make sure the people who donated was built before the second group that punches it out. Otherwise, I might actually leave people out of the group or add them in when I didn't want to. Check your rebuild schedules if you're building one on top of the other. Also, when you're combining groups, Blackbaud will say don't combine groups for that exact reason. But again, it's just that rebuild. As long as you test things. When you've got custom fields, note the difference between saying no and not having answered, or having a number that's 0 versus being blank. When you're doing a report writer and you're doing filters or groups, it'll actually matter. make sure that the people who are legal, it just comes down to testing. If you're doing a repeat email, make sure that you have removed people in your group that you send to. So like, let's say you're doing a people who have donated in the last year, and then you did a repeat email. You stop that email to rewrite it and relaunch it again. You use the same group you had before. Guess what? All those people that were supposed to be knocked out because they had already received that email, they're no longer in that group. You made a new email. It basically started counting everything over again. So make sure when you relaunch a repeating email and you're using a group that you actually have made a group that holds off all the other people. You don't want to launch a new welcome series that's only supposed to be targeting people older than a week ago, and then every single person who already got the welcome series gets it again because they qualified. Report writer, just play around with it to find all those things, and you can probably find something that you couldn't export before in your mail merge. And did I mention test everything? Test everything, test everything. There you go, everybody. Sorry we ran over about 30 seconds, but if you have any questions, I can stick around a little bit if you want them in the chat. You can also email me, jeremy.reynolds@streetlightdigital. Always love to answer questions. I hope this has all been helpful to everybody, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you, Blackbaud family.
And don't forget to take the survey. Yeah.